What's up? What's good? We are back on the channel today with another banger. I know, it's been a minute, but I got sick last week and I'm still not fully recovered yet, but I just wanted to get back. And today, we're doing another tier ranking video. Specifically, I'll be tier ranking Drake. Drake, Drizzy, Aubrey Graham, BBL Drizzy, whatever you want to call him, is one of the most polarizing but also successful and popular rappers ever. And he has a massive discography and a lot of albums. So I won't waste any of your time. Without further ado, let's get it. Now let's start off with So Far Gone. This album was really good. It's a great opener to Drake's discography. It's nothing too special, I would say, so I think it deserves to be B tier. Thank Me Later was a really, really good album. It's one of Drake's best. It's very underrated. I think it's slightly better than So Far Gone, so I'll put it into A tier for now. Because now we get into his big three, in my opinion. Take Care. Nothing Was the Same. And If You Read This, It's Too Late. All three are elite albums. And Drake's best three albums, in my opinion. He doesn't really reach this level of pure rapping ever again in any of his albums, in my opinion. Specifically, If You're Reading This, It's Too Late has Drake at his best. The best production, best pure rapping in terms of lyricism and flow. The features are amazing. There's zero skips. The album is just beautiful, right? I'd say Nothing Was the Same is probably second. No, I'll say it's third. I would say Take Care is probably second just because of how deep into his R&B bag he gets. He does really well. Great singing, great vocals on his R&B songs. The rapping's also there. So I'd say Take Care is slightly better than Nothing Was the Same. But then again, Take Care is a little bit longer and has a couple skips, while Nothing Was the Same has zero skips. And it's just a great, concise, really good album. And honestly, any way you want to rank these three is valid because all three of these albums are elite. And I think it's pretty hard to argue that any other album is better than these three, right? Like this has to be Drake's top three for anyone. But with those three out of the way, we had to What a Time to Be Alive, which was the mixtape, or I guess collab album between Drake and Future. It's a really good project, but nothing too special. So I'd say B tier is probably valid. I might be underrating it. It might be a little bit better, but I'd say it's B tier for now. I think it's better than, okay, I'll put an A tier. I think it's better than So Far Gone. So as a result, I'll put in the same tier as Thank Me Later. I think that's valid. They're both really great albums. It's just they're not as good as his top three. Now we get into Views, which is, in my opinion, Drake's last elite album, right? Has a cool concept of going through the seasons from summer to fall to winter to spring to back to the summer. It was a cool concept, very few skips. It's a really good album as a whole. And Drake's last S tier album on this list, in my opinion. Then we get into More Life. More Life was a solid album. It's nothing too crazy. Some really good songs, but overall, I think it's just a good Drake album, not elite. So that's why I put it into the B tier. Because I think it's not terrible, right? It's not D or F, right? It's also not mid. I think it's slightly better than mid. So as a result, B tier is probably valid. Then we get into Scorpion. Scorpion is one of Drake's most anticipated albums, but also one of his biggest flops, in my opinion, right? It's not a bad album at all. It's just he has way too many songs on there. He has some really good tracks. He has some really good bangers. But the thing is, he also has way too many songs that are just all right or bad. Because of that, I have to put it into C tier, right? It's not great. I might honestly put it lower looking back on it once we get back to it, but for now I'll put it into C tier. Now we get into Take Care, or not Take Care, Care Package, and then now Dark Lane demo tapes. Both of these were solid. I'll put both of them in B tier. They're both kind of similar. They weren't bad. They weren't great, but they were definitely better than Scorpion. I'll give that to you. So both of these are like B tier. Now CLB, Certified Lover Boy. I was so hyped for this album. This and Donda releasing around the same time. Everyone in the rap game was hyped, and it just kind of turned out to be the same way as Donda for me. Both of them are just mid albums, right? CLB might be one of the most overrated, not overrated, but how do you explain this? The most overhyped, there we go. One of the most overhyped albums I've ever listened to. I was so unbelievably hyped to listen to it, and it just turned out to be all right. There were definitely some really good tracks, like In Too Deep was great. Obviously, Thames killed her part on Yeah, It Was Heartbreak. There was some really bad tracks too. Like, I don't know. It's just the album as a whole is just overall mid at best. And that's looking past the fact there's way too many songs on the album again. And that's a common issue we'll see with a lot of these albums, in these, at least the newer Drake albums. And the older Drake albums didn't really matter that much because he'd be going hit for hit. There'd be very few skips. But on these new albums, he just has way too many skips to really consider the album as good when half the project or so is just all right at best. So I think CLB goes into mid, so C tier. Now we get to his worst album. We'll put it in F tier. There's no reason to even like sit on this. There's no reason to talk about it. Honestly, Nevermind is undoubtedly Drake's worst album, and that should not be a question. And I get it. He tried being experimental. He tried to get into house music. But he did it so poorly that I think people that actually listen to house might have listened to the album and were glad that Drake was not a house hit maker, right? Like that he didn't get into house because it was just such a bad album. He got really lazy with the production. The vocals were just all right at best. And the thing that I didn't like too was that he just randomly added like a rap song at the end of the album. That was a virus song. Jimmy Cooks is a great song, but he kind of threw away the entire point of the album of being a house music album and just threw a random rap album, or not rap album, but a random rap song with 21 Savage on there. So I just didn't like the creative vision he took with it, and the album was just really bad. So honestly, Nevermind definitely deserves F tier. Now we get to Her Loss, which was honestly one of Drake's better projects recently, right? Him and 21 get a collab album. They both do really well. It's more so like Drake's album than 21's album, but 21 still does his thing for sure. And because of that, I think it's a B tier album. It's not elite, but it's also not bad because it's definitely not as bad as Honestly Nevermind, and it's definitely better than Scorpion and CLB. So I'd say it's probably like on the same level as these four albums. So I think B tier is fair. It's just it kind of sounds similar at a certain point in the album. There's like so many songs that blend together, which kind of decreases my overall ranking of the album and view of it. Now we get to his last album, at least until now. For All the Dogs. I really thought this could be a banger. I thought this would be another Drake classic. I thought he'd go down like a route of maybe doing like a cool concept with like the Bark radio that he was talking about on the album, but didn't really do that. He had way too many songs on this album. Just wasn't a great album at all. So I think I'll put it into C tier. It's not terrible. There's definitely some really good songs. But overall it's just all right at best. So now we'll look back at like the tier rankings. I think S tier is fine. Take Care, Nothing Was the Same, If You're Reading This Is Too Late, and Views are all S tier in my opinion. And I think those are easily his four best albums. It's going to be tough to top that ever again, especially with the way that Drake's been producing and making these like okay albums recently. A tier, I put Thank Me Later, What a Time to Be Alive, which I think is valid because both these are great albums. They're just not as good as these S tier ones. But they're also so much better than like the B tier, C tier, and obviously the F tier. Now we get to the B tier. I think these 4 albums are fair, or I guess 5 now, are fair to put there. They're great, not great albums, but they're good albums. They're just not as good as these albums up here. So that's why I put them in the B tier. C tier, Scorpion, CLB for All the Dogs. All very hyped albums that just didn't turn out as good because of the fact that there's way too many songs. So I think it's fair to put them in the C tier. I might drop Scorpion down to D tier because it was worse than these two for sure. Yeah, I think I'll keep Scorpion in D tier. It just wasn't as good as the other 2 albums. There's way too many songs, as I've said like over and over again. There's an issue with Drake recently, is that he's been putting way too many songs on these albums, just throwing them on there. When in reality, he should just be like cutting down like the tracks to like, I don't know, like anywhere from like 10 to 15. I think is a reasonable number of songs. Because once you get too many songs, that's when there's like an issue of like quality, right? Quality ends up decreasing when you have more songs in the album, or at least that's what has happened with these 3. But yeah, I think it's worse than CLB and For All the Dogs, so that's why Scorpion goes in D tier. And F tier, I think honestly Nevermind deserves to be F tier, man. Like there's nothing on that album that makes me excited. I don't listen to any of those songs ever again, other than Jimmy Cook's. So overall, it was just a really bad album. Experimental for sure, but he did it very badly or poorly. So that's why honestly Nevermind's probably an F tier album. That's all we have for today. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below what you think. Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Do you think I rated some Drake albums too high? Rated them too low? I don't know. Whatever it is, just let me know. And with that being said, until next time.